Welcome to Your Next English. You're listening to English Listening Practice, Football Legends Stories, where great football stories become a powerful way to improve your English. Here, you'll discover the incredible lives of football legends, their dreams, struggles, victories, and unforgettable moments. And while you enjoy every story, you're naturally strengthening your English listening, vocabulary, pronunciation, and comprehension. You'll hear clear, natural American English, helping you understand more, follow conversations, and build confidence as you listen. So take a breath, get comfortable, and let the story take you into the world of a football legend. Listen carefully, enjoy the journey, and get ready to discover a legend. Let's get started.
Who is Pele?
Well, while millions of people around the world know him as the king of football, very few truly know the extraordinary story behind his legendary success.
Right. Was Pele simply born with extraordinary talent?
Or, how did a poor young boy from Brazil become the greatest football icon of all time?
What challenges, sacrifices, and defining moments shaped his incredible journey?
And ultimately, what lessons can we learn from his remarkable life?
Welcome, everyone. We are just so thrilled to have you with us for this deep dive today. Now, before we jump into the vibrant streets of Brazil, I want to quickly mention our mission for this conversation.
Yeah, that is a great point to start with.
We are exploring an incredible story, sure, but this is also a fun, completely natural way for you to improve your English.
Exactly. By spending this time with us, you are going to improve your English listening skills. You will learn useful vocabulary right in context.
Right, and you will understand natural American English conversations.
You will also improve your pronunciation just by listening and really build confidence in your spoken English.
So we want you to just relax. Let the story play out like a movie in your mind. We're going to speak very slowly, very clearly, and just at a natural pace.
And this story we are exploring today, it is packed with huge universal themes. We are looking at a life defined by perseverance, deep humility, and, discipline.
Resilience and hope, too. It really is a masterclass in believing that no dream is impossible.
It really is. So let us go back to the very beginning. Long before the giant stadiums, before the global fame, and before the whole world knew the king of football, there was just a boy named Edson.
Edson, born on October 23, 1940. He was born in a town called Três Corações, but he grew up mostly in Bauru, and his full name was Edson Arantes do Nascimento.
Right, and here's a fun fact. He was actually named after the famous American inventor Thomas Edison.
Wait, really? Thomas Edison, the man who invented the light bulb?
Yeah, exactly. His parents just dropped the letter I from the name, so it became Edson.
I find that so fascinating. Like, his parents wanted to name him after a man who brought light to the world, and he ended up bringing a completely different kind of light to the sport of football.
That is a beautiful way to put it.
But wait, if his given name was Edson, where did the name Pelé actually come from? I always assumed it was like a special word in Portuguese.
That is a very common assumption, but the word Pelé actually means absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. It has no translation. And the most surprising part of his early childhood is that he completely hated the name.
He hated the most famous name in sports history.
He really did. When he was a young boy at school, a classmate started calling him Pelé just to make fun of the way he pronounced the name of a local goalkeeper.
Oh, I see. Kids can be so cruel with nicknames.
Yeah, and young Edson got so angry about this nickname that he actually punched his classmate.
Oh, wow. He started a physical fight over it.
He did.
That is just a normal, emotional reaction from a kid who feels like he is being mocked,
Right, but there were consequences. Because he started that fight, he received a 2-day suspension from school. He was sent home.
So he got kicked out of school for 2 days for a name that would later become his global brand.
Exactly. He wrote in his autobiography years later that he eventually learned to love the name, but back in those days in Bauru, it just made his blood boil.
That paints such a clear picture of a regular kid. But we really have to talk about the reality of his daily life because it was far from easy. He was born into severe poverty.
Yes. His family really struggled to survive in Bauru. They lived in a very tough economic situation.
And because money was so tight, young Pelé had to work in the streets.
He worked as a shoe shiner. He would literally walk around with his wooden box, cleaning and polishing shoes for a few coins.
And I read in our research that he also sold roasted peanuts outside the local movie theaters.
Yeah, He would stand outside in the evenings, hoping to sell enough peanuts just to help his family buy basic food.
But he also had a personal goal, right? He wanted to save enough coins to buy a real soccer ball.
Because football was already in his blood, his father was a professional player.
His father was known as Dondinho.
Right, Dondinho was a very talented center forward. In fact, Dondinho once scored 5 goals using only his head in a single match.
Wow, 5 headers in one game. That is incredible.
It is. But his professional career ended in an absolute tragedy. He suffered a terrible knee injury.
And we have to remember the context of the 1940s and 1950s here. Today, if a player tears a muscle in their knee, they have surgery and, they are playing again in 6 months.
Right. Modern medicine is amazing.
But back then, a bad knee injury was a permanent career death sentence.
That is exactly what happened. Dondinho could no longer play at a high level, and because his career ended so suddenly, the family lost their primary source of income.
So that is why they lived in such deep poverty. The dream of football had actually brought them a lot of pain.
Exactly. Which perfectly sets the stage for one of the most cinematic moments of his early life. We are in the year 1950. Pele is just 9 years old.
Okay, 1950.
Brazil is hosting the World Cup, and the entire nation fully expects to win, but in the final match, they lose to Uruguay.
The event is known historically as the Maracanazo. It was a massive cultural trauma for Brazil.
The entire country fell into a deep, heavy silence. People were openly weeping in the streets. Football in Brazil is not just a game, it is a core part of their national identity.
And young Pele is watching all the adults around him react to this loss. But more importantly, he sees his father, Dondinho, crying.
It was the first time the young boy had ever seen his strong father cry. Think about how confusing and scary that can be for a 9-year-old boy.
Right. His father was his absolute hero, and he is completely broken by a football match.
So Pele walks up to his father in that intense moment of grief, and he makes a promise.
What does he say?
He looks at his dad and says, "Don't cry, Dad. I'll win the World Cup for you."
Wow. It is a heavy promise for a child. A boy wearing ragged clothes, shining shoes on dirt roads, promising to win the most prestigious tournament on the planet.
It sounds impossible.
But here is the critical question. How does a kid practice to win a World Cup? When he is so poor, he cannot even afford a real ball.
Well, you get creative. His family simply did not have the money for a leather football. So Pele would find an old, discarded sock.
The sock?
Yes. He would stuff it tightly with crumpled newspaper, old rags, and pieces of string to hold it all together.
He played with a stuffed sock.
Or sometimes a grapefruit, if he could find one. He and his friends played in the dirt streets of Bauru. Because they could not afford football boots, they played completely barefoot.
Barefoot in the dirt.
Yeah, they even called their local street team the Shoeless One.
The shoeless ones. But, when you really analyze that, the extreme poverty was actually building his physical genius. It wasn't just a sad backstory.
You were absolutely right.
Like playing barefoot on uneven, rocky dirt roads with a heavy, weirdly shaped sock. It forces a player to develop unnatural balance.
All right, you have to learn how to cushion the object with your bare foot.
Yeah.
You learn spatial awareness and perfect close-control dribbling.
So when he eventually stepped onto a smooth, flat grass pitch with a perfectly round, lightweight leather ball, it must have felt completely effortless, like taking heavy weights off your ankles.
Exactly. The poverty forced him to build a technical foundation that wealthy kids, playing on nice fields, simply did not have.
It activated his potential. He learned to anticipate unpredictable bounces.
That street education is a core element of why his ball control looked like pure magic later in life.
So we have this exceptionally talented teenager playing in the streets. But Bauru is a small town. How does a street kid actually get discovered by the professional leagues?
This brings us to his teenage years. A man named Waldemar de Brito enters the picture.
Who is Waldemar?
Waldemar was a respected former professional player. He had played for the Brazilian national team in the 1934 World Cup. He took a job coaching a youth team in Bauru.
And he spots Pele playing.
Yes. I can only imagine what Waldemar was thinking.
Yeah.
He sees a kid doing things with a ball that seasoned professionals cannot do.
Waldemar recognized the genius immediately. He brought Pele onto his youth squad and started teaching him tactical discipline to match his street skills.
But here is a really fascinating detail we found in the sources. Pele didn't actually want to be a professional football player at first.
Right. I saw that in our notes. He wanted to be a pilot.
He did. He was absolutely obsessed with airplanes.
But that dream ended in a very tragic way, right?
It did. When he was young, a small glider airplane crashed near his neighborhood. Pele and his friends ran to see it, and he saw the deceased pilot inside the wreckage.
Oh, that is awful.
The sight was so traumatizing that he immediately abandoned his dream of flying forever.
That is incredibly dark. But it makes complete sense why a child would turn away from aviation after seeing something like that. So, he commits to football. I imagine his mother was thrilled.
Actually, his mother, Donna Celeste, was terrified.
Really, even with a former World Cup player telling her that her son was a genius.
You have to view it from her perspective. She watched football destroy her husband's body. She watched Dondinho's knee injury plunge their entire family into severe poverty.
Oh, right. To her, professional football was a trap.
Exactly. It was a path to a hard, unstable life. When big clubs first started showing interest, she actively rejected the offers. She wanted to protect her son from his father's fate.
That is very protective, rational parenting. But Waldemar de Brito was persistent.
He was very persistent. He eventually sat down with Donna Celeste and convinced her that Pele's talent was too monumental to ignore. He promised to look after him personally.
So Waldemar packed up the 15-year-old boy and took him to the coastal city of Santos to try out for Santos FC.
Now, leaving a small inland town for a massive, bustling port city like Santos, that is a massive cultural shock. And the story of his arrival is so vivid.
It really is. We have a great behind-the-scenes account from a Santos player named Pepe.
Right. Pepe was in a barbershop getting a haircut when Waldemar walked in with this very skinny, nervous 15-year-old boy.
And the boy was wearing a brand new blue suit.
And that blue suit is significant because it was the very first time in Pele's entire life that he had ever worn long trousers. Up until that exact day, he had only ever owned shorts.
Just shorts. That really highlights how poor they were. When he walked into Santos in that new blue suit, it was pure, nervous freshman on the first day of high school energy.
He was completely out of his element. He moved into a basic dormitory room located directly beneath the concrete steps of the stadium.
He must have been terribly homesick.
Yeah.
He's tiny. Our sources note he weighed less than 60 kilos when he arrived.
Very small. The coaches immediately told him he needed to eat heavy meals and lift weights just to survive the physical impact of professional defenders.
He was incredibly homesick. And while his talent was obvious to the coaches, his early days at Santos almost ended in a total disaster.
Yeah, we found a story about a specific under-16 youth match that almost changed the course of sports history.
I love this story because it shows his vulnerability. What happened in that youth match?
Well, Santos was playing in a very competitive youth tournament. Pele stepped up to take a crucial penalty kick, and he missed.
Oh, no.
Because of his miss, his team lost the tournament. The local crowd was furious, and they loudly booed the 15-year-old as he walked off the pitch.
For a kid who was already lonely, living beneath the stadium steps, missing his family, having a stadium of adults screaming at you must be devastating.
It broke him. He cried alone in the locker room, and that night, he made a firm decision.
What did he do?
He packed his small suitcase in the dark. He planned to sneak out of the stadium before the sun came up, walk to the train station, and go back home to Bauru forever.
He actually tried to quit.
He did. He walked out of his room with his bag, but as he tried to leave the facility, a night security guard stopped him at the gate.
Just a random security guard.
Yes. The club had a strict rule. Players who were minors could not leave the grounds without written permission from the management.
Wow. So the guard told him to turn around and go back to bed.
Yes. That unnamed security guard literally saved football history. If that guard had been looking the other way, or if he had simply felt bad for the crying kid and let him leave, the legend of Pele might never have existed.
It is stunning how history hinges on these tiny, seemingly insignificant interactions.
It really is.
So he stays, he goes back to sleep, he keeps practicing, and very shortly after that, his life accelerates at an unbelievable pace.
On September 7, 1956, still at the young age of 15, he makes his debut for the Santos senior team.
They win the match 7-1, and Pele scores his very first professional goal.
He is playing against grown men, seasoned professionals, and he completely dominates them. In his second season, he scores 58 goals in just 38 matches. He becomes a massive sensation across Brazil.
But dominating a local Brazilian league is one thing. The world stage is an entirely different, unforgiving beast. Which brings us to the summer of 1958.
The 1958 World Cup is held in Sweden. Pele is selected for the Brazilian national squad.
He is only 17 years old. Taking a teenager to a World Cup in Europe is a massive gamble for a country that is just desperate to win.
The Brazilian team management was incredibly anxious about it. In fact, before the tournament started, they hired a sports psychologist to evaluate the mental readiness of every player on the roster.
I was reading about that evaluation. The doctor didn't just say Pele was young. The report specifically claimed that Pele was obviously infantile.
Yeah, infantile. They actually thought he lacked the mental capacity and maturity to handle the intense pressure of a World Cup.
They essentially called him a child in a professional's body.
To make matters worse, Pele had suffered a painful knee injury in a warm-up match. So the management looks at this 17-year-old kid, who a doctor says is mentally unprepared and who is currently limping.
So he starts the tournament on the bench. He completely misses the first 2 games.
But the veteran players on the Brazilian team, the players who train with him every day, they go to the coach, they demand that the kid plays.
And when the coach finally puts him on the pitch for the 3rd game against the Soviet Union, everything changes. The speed, the vision, the fearlessness.
He was completely unstoppable, a 17-year-old dismantling experienced European defenses. He scores 6 goals in the tournament.
But we have to talk about his goal in the final match against Sweden. It is a defining moment of his career.
It is a moment of pure genius. Picture the scene here. Brazil is playing the host nation, Sweden. The Swedish defenders are large, highly disciplined, physical players.
Right. Pele receives a high pass inside the crowded penalty box.
He controls the dropping ball perfectly with his chest. A tall, Swedish defender rushes aggressively toward him to clear the ball away.
And instead of passing it or trying to muscle past the big defender, Pele does something no European team had ever seen before.
With a soft, delicate flick of his right foot, he pops the ball high into the air, right over the rushing defender's head.
The defender is completely lost. Pele simply runs around him, waits for the ball to drop, and strikes it into the bottom corner of the net before it even touches the grass.
It was a shocking display of creativity. That type of move flicking the ball over a defender in the penalty box was considered far too risky, almost disrespectful, in traditional European tactics.
But Pele proved that beauty and joy could dismantle rigid defense. Brazil wins the final 5-2. Pele scores twice.
And when the referee blows the final whistle, the emotion is just too much for him.
He actually faints.
He passes out right on the pitch, overwhelmed by the physical exhaustion and the heavy emotional weight of what he just achieved. His teammates literally have to wake him up.
And when he wakes up, he realizes he did it. 8 years after watching his father cry over the 1950 loss, the 17-year-old boy fulfilled his promise.
He won the World Cup for his dad.
It is a perfect narrative arc. Following that victory, Pele's fame explodes globally. Over the next 4 years, he becomes the undisputed best player on the planet.
Everyone is waiting for the 1962 World Cup in Chile to see what he will do next.
But the reality of sports is often cruel. The 1962 tournament does not go as planned for him personally.
No, it does not. In just the second match of the group stage, Pele suffers a severe muscle tear in his groin and thigh. The pain is intense.
And the injury is serious enough that his tournament is instantly over. Think about how isolating that feels.
You are the king. The entire tournament is marketed around you, and your body just fails you.
You have to sit on the wooden bench in a tracksuit and watch your team fight without you.
It requires immense mental resilience to support your teammates when you are personally devastated. Fortunately for Brazil, another legendary player, Garrincha, stepped up and played the tournament of his life.
Brazil wins their 2nd consecutive World Cup. So Brazil wins, and Pele technically gets his 2nd World Cup victory.
Well, technically yes, but officially there is a very interesting piece of history here regarding the medals.
Oh, what happened with the medals?
In 1962, the international football governing body, FIFA, had a very strict rule. They only awarded winners' medals to the 11 players who were actually on the pitch at the end of the final match.
Even if you played in the earlier matches and helped the team advance.
Exactly. Because Pele was injured and did not play in the final game against Czechoslovakia, he was not given a medal. He went home entirely empty-handed.
That seems incredibly harsh.
It was a serious flaw in the system. But justice was eventually served, even if it took a really long time.
How long did it take?
FIFA officially changed their rules retroactively, and in the year 1978, they finally presented Pele with his 1962 winner's medal.
16 years later. Well, at least history corrected itself eventually. So, moving forward, Brazil has won in 1958 and 1962.
The world is looking toward the 1966 World Cup in England, and by this time, European teams have heavily analyzed Pele's game. They have realized a grim truth.
They realize that you cannot defend against a ghost. You cannot stop Pele with traditional tactical skill.
Right, he's too fast, his balance is too perfect, and he sees passes that no one else sees.
So the opposing teams adopted a darker strategy. If they could not stop him with skill, they would stop him with brute force.
The 1966 tournament was incredibly violent, and the referees during that era did not protect creative attacking players the way they do today.
They really did not. In the very first game against Bulgaria, Pele scored a brilliant goal from a free kick. But the Bulgarian defenders spent the entire match kicking his legs, stomping on his feet, and tackling him late.
He was badly bruised. He is forced to sit out the second game against Hungary just to heal, and Brazil loses that match.
So it comes down to a must-win third game against Portugal. Pele has to play, even though he is in a lot of pain.
And the Portuguese defenders were relentless. They targeted him maliciously. Every time he touched the ball, a defender would crash into his knees.
Finally, a brutal high tackle took him out completely. His knee was deeply injured. When you watch the historical footage of that game, it does not look like a football match.
It really doesn't.
It looks like a demolition derby. You know those events where drivers just smash old cars into each other until only one is left running? They were trying to break him.
And they succeeded. There is a hauntingly tragic image from that day. The cameras capture Pele being slowly helped off the green grass of the pitch.
Someone has draped a heavy overcoat over his shoulders to keep him warm. He is limping heavily, looking down at the ground, completely battered.
It is the visual definition of a beautiful artist being destroyed by a gang. Because of his injury, Brazil loses to Portugal, and they are eliminated in the very first round.
It is a national disaster for Brazil, and the emotional fallout was severe.
Pele was totally disgusted. He felt that the sport he loved, the game he viewed as a canvas for art, had been turned into a literal war zone. The violence and the lack of referee protection broke his spirit.
And he makes a massive public announcement. He vows to never play in a World Cup again.
He retired from the national team. He told the press that he did not want to end his life in a wheelchair just for a trophy. It seemed like the tragic end of his international story.
But time is a great healer. 4 years pass. The 1970 World Cup in Mexico is approaching.
And Pele starts to feel the pull of the pitch again. He realizes he doesn't want his final memory of the World Cup to be that heavy overcoat in England.
He found his resilience. He wanted to prove that the beautiful game could triumph over the violent tactics of 1966. So he reverses his decision.
He comes out of international retirement.
And what a comeback it is. He joins what many sports historians believe is the greatest team ever assembled, the 1970 Brazil squad.
The roster was an absolute masterpiece. The coach actually took 5 players who all played the same number 10 playmaker position for their local clubs, players like Rivellino, Jairzinho, Tostão, Gerson, and Pelé, and put them all on the pitch at the exact same time.
Tactically, that sounds like chaos, having 5 playmakers on the field together.
But in practice, it was a symphony. They played with a rhythm and a fluid creativity that mesmerized the whole world.
And anchoring the entire operation was a 29-year-old Pele. He was physically stronger, tactically wiser, and playing with pure joy.
They completely dominated the tournament in the bright Mexican sun. They defeated Italy in the final, securing Brazil's 3rd World Cup title.
And by lifting that trophy in 1970, Pele accomplished something entirely unique.
Right. To this very day, he remains the only male player in the history of football to win 3 World Cups. That tournament forever cemented his title as the king.
Coming back from the physical and mental trauma of 1966 to achieve ultimate perfection in 1970. It is a profound lesson in not letting your failures or your injuries define your final chapter.
Now, with 3 World Cups secured, there was really nothing left for him to prove on the international stage. So his focus shifted back to his club, Santos, and a rapidly approaching, almost mythical milestone.
The chase for the 1,000th professional goal. O millesimo.
Scoring 1,000 goals in official professional matches is a mathematical mountain that very few athletes can even dream of climbing.
But by the late autumn of 1969, he was right on the edge. The entire nation of Brazil was tracking his every single match. Let's set the stage for this massive cultural event.
It is November 19th, 1969. Santos is playing against Vasco da Gama. The match is at the legendary Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro.
The atmosphere was incredibly tense. There are 80,000 screaming fans packed into the concrete stadium, and there is a heavy tropical rainstorm pouring down on the players.
And there is this fantastic historical parallel happening on that exact same day. Up in space, the United States was executing the Apollo 12 moon landing.
But back on Earth, The live television broadcast from the moon failed. The screens just went blank.
Because the global audience could not watch the astronauts walking on the moon, millions of television viewers around the world changed the channel to watch Pele try to make history in the rain in Brazil.
The pressure is just immense. Santos is awarded a penalty kick. Pele steps up.
Standing in the Vasco da Gama goal is an Argentine goalkeeper named Edgardo Andrada.
And Andrada was desperate to stop this shot, wasn't he?
He was. He knew that if he let the ball in, his name would be permanently attached to this historic moment, but as the victim. He was highly motivated to ruin the party.
Pele runs up to the ball. He strikes it. Andrada guesses the right direction. He dives. He even gets a hand on the ball. But he can't stop it. The ball hits the back of the net.
Andrada punches the wet grass in sheer frustration. But the stadium erupts. The referee actually stops the match completely.
Hundreds of photographers, reporters, and fans sprint past the security and flood the pitch. They lift Pele onto their shoulders and parade him around the field.
It is absolute chaos. Microphones are shoved into his face. The whole country is listening, waiting to hear what the king will say in his greatest moment of individual glory.
In that moment, he could have talked about his greatness. He could have thanked his sponsors. But instead, he made a deeply emotional and highly risky political plea.
We really have to remember, Brazil in 1969 was controlled by a very harsh, restrictive military dictatorship. Speaking out on live television was dangerous.
It was incredibly risky.
Yeah.
But Pele looked directly into the cameras with the rain falling on his face and said, "For the love of God, people, now that everyone is listening, help the poor children of Brazil. Help the helpless. That is my only wish."
In the absolute peak of his fame, his mind went straight back to the shoeless kids playing in the dirt streets of Bauru.
He used his platform to beg the country to look at the poverty they were ignoring. That shows incredible empathy.
It reveals the true core of his character. However, there is a brilliant historical twist to the story of the 1,000th goal, a mystery that was only uncovered years later.
Yes. The mystery of the lost goal. How exactly do you lose a professional goal?
Well, long after Pele retired, sports statisticians were meticulously reviewing the archives, counting every single match he ever played. They discovered a match from 1959 that had been completely overlooked.
Why was it overlooked?
In 1959, Pele played in a tournament for the Brazilian military team against Paraguay. He scored a goal in that match. But because it was a military tournament, the regular sports newspapers and the club record keepers failed to add it to his official running total.
Okay, let's process the math on this. If there was an uncounted goal from 10 years earlier, that means when he scored that famous penalty in the rain at the Maracana, it wasn't his 1,000th goal.
It was actually goal number 1001.
So millions of people, a massive stadium, a global broadcast, they were all celebrating the wrong goal. When and where did the actual 1,000th goal happen?
The true 1,000th goal occurred 5 days earlier on November 14th, 1969, and the setting could not have been more different from the Maracana.
Where was it?
It was in a small, remote coastal city called João Pessoa in the northeast of Brazil. Santos was playing a friendly match against a local team called Botafogo da Paraíba.
And the story of what happened in that small town is pure comedy. Santos management desperately wanted the milestone to happen in a major media market like Rio or São Paulo, right?
Exactly. A huge stadium meant massive ticket sales and global press coverage. They did not want the historic moment wasted in a small rural stadium.
During the match in João Pessoa, Pele scored a penalty kick. According to their flawed records at the time, everyone thought this was goal number 999.
The local fans go wild. They realize they are only one goal away from history, and they start chanting for Pele to score again.
The Santos executives start panicking. They need to stop Pele from scoring another goal in this game. So they execute a very suspicious tactical move.
Suddenly, the Santos goalkeeper falls to the ground. He claims he is deeply injured and cannot continue playing.
Oh, how convenient. And back in those days, teams rarely carried substitute goalkeepers on the bench.
Correct. If your goalie got hurt, an outfield player had to put on the gloves and go into the net. So the coach looks at Pele, the greatest goal scorer in human history, and tells him to play goalkeeper for the rest of the match.
Because if he is standing in his own penalty box wearing gloves, he can't possibly run down the field and score the milestone goal. They benched him by putting him in goal.
It is a hilarious truth. Before Pele put on the goalie jersey, a local politician walked to the side of the pitch.
Pele took off his sweaty number 10 shirt, handed it to the politician, and reportedly said, "There is your jersey, thy will is done."
And nobody realized until years later that the sweaty shirt he handed away in that small town was actually the jersey worn for the true 1,000th goal.
It perfectly captures the chaotic, unpredictable magic of football history.
It really does. But regardless of the mathematical error, the legacy of that week remains intact. His immediate instinct was to advocate for the vulnerable.
So he has the goals, he has the World Cups, he has conquered South America and the international stage. But why didn't he go test himself in the European leagues? Big clubs like Real Madrid and Juventus were offering massive amounts of money to sign him.
He wanted to, but the political situation in Brazil prevented it. The president of Brazil passed an official decree declaring Pelé a national treasure.
Like a monument or a protected park.
Exactly. Legally, it meant that he could not be exported. He could not be sold to a foreign corporation or football club. He was legally bound to remain in Brazil and play for Santos during his prime years.
That is an unbelievable restriction on a person's career. But eventually, in 1974, he retires from Santos. He's in his mid-30s. He is ready to rest. But then, a completely unexpected frontier opens up.
In 1975, he shocks the sporting world. He announces he is coming out of retirement, but he is not going to Europe. He signs a contract to play for the New York Cosmos in the United States.
The United States in 1975 was a soccer wasteland. Americans watched baseball, American football, and basketball. Soccer was a fringe sport played by immigrants and young children. Why on earth did he choose New York?
There were a few motivating factors. First, the financial offer was staggering. The Cosmos offered him around $7 million for 3 years.
That is a lot of money in the 1970s.
He had recently lost money in some bad business investments, so the financial security was appealing. Second, he really wanted to immerse himself in English and learn the language fluently.
And the competitive reason.
He looked at the landscape and saw a challenge. He told the press that if he went to Spain or Italy, he would just be playing more football. But by going to America, he had the opportunity to build a sport from the ground up.
He wanted to plant the seeds of a new cultural phenomenon. When he arrived in New York, the Cosmos were playing their matches on a dusty field in a small stadium, pulling in maybe 6,000 fans.
But his arrival instantly changed the gravity of the city. Suddenly, the Cosmos moved to Giant Stadium. They were playing on green AstroTurf in front of 70,000 screaming fans.
He turned a fringe sport into the hottest ticket in New York City. The VIP sections were packed with global icons. You had Mick Jagger, Muhammad Ali, Robert Redford, all coming to the stadium just to watch this Brazilian man control a ball.
He made soccer culturally relevant in America for the first time, and his presence opened the door for other international superstars.
Because Pele proved America was a viable market, legends like Johan Cruyff from the Netherlands and Franz Beckenbauer from Germany eventually came over to play.
He led the Cosmos to the league championship in 1977, and then he decided his legs had run enough. His final farewell match was scheduled for October 1st, 1977.
And they organized a deeply poetic final game. It was an exhibition match between the two great loves of his professional life, the New York Cosmos and Santos.
It was a massive celebration. Over 75,000 fans in the stadium, broadcast around the world. And Pele handled it beautifully.
He played the first half of the match wearing the white jersey of the Cosmos, and he actually scored a vintage free kick.
Then, during halftime, he changed his shirt. He came out for the second half wearing the iconic white and black of Santos.
Honoring both chapters of his life, and nature provided the most dramatic closing scene possible. During the second half, a massive rainstorm swept over the stadium.
The next morning, a Brazilian newspaper published a photograph of the stadium in the rain with a headline that read, "Even the sky was crying." The king had officially stepped off the pitch for the last time.
But hanging up his boots did not mean fading into the shadows. The final chapter of our deep dive explores his life after football. He leveraged his massive global fame to do substantial humanitarian work.
He traveled tirelessly as a global ambassador for organizations like UNICEF and UNESCO. He focused specifically on children's health, education, and fighting poverty.
He also entered the political arena in Brazil. In 1995, he was appointed as Brazil's extraordinary minister for sport.
And he didn't just smile and shake hands, he pushed through significant legislation.
He championed the creation of the Pele law. It was designed to modernize Brazilian football, reduce corruption among the executives, and fundamentally give young players more legal rights over their own contracts and careers.
He also recognized the immense power of his image regarding racial equality.
This is a crucial part of his legacy. During a tour of Africa with Santos in 1967, he saw how the crowds reacted to him.
In a deeply prejudiced world, he stood as a towering, undeniable example of Black excellence. He provided immense pride and a sense of possibility to marginalized communities across the globe.
When you synthesize all of this, the legislation, the charity, the speeches, it all traces back to his roots. His empathy was forged in the dirt streets of Bauru.
He deeply understood suffering because he had lived inside it. There is a quote from him that summarizes his worldview perfectly.
What did he say?
He once said that poverty is not simply a lack of money or food. He said, poverty is fear. It is a fear of life.
A fear of life. Because when you are deeply impoverished, you are terrified of tomorrow. You are afraid you won't survive the week.
Exactly. Pele spent his post-football decades using his voice to try and eliminate that fear for others. He wanted to give children the security to dream, the way Waldemar de Brito gave him the security to dream.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. Let's reflect on the journey we just took. Pele's life proves that raw talent is never enough. His story is a masterclass in relentless determination.
It is a study in resilience. Remember the image of him battered and limping off the field in 1966? Most people would have stayed retired, but he returned in 1970 to prove that art and joy can triumph over brutality.
It is a lesson in humility, turning the spotlight away from himself to advocate for the poor during his 1,000th goal celebration.
But as we wrap up this conversation, I want to leave you, our listener, with a provocative thought to chew on, something to think about as you watch modern sports today.
What is the thought?
Look at the landscape of professional football right now. It is completely hyper-analyzed. Academies track a child's diet, their sleep, and their GPS running data from the time they are 7 years old. Everything is perfectly manicured grass and tactical algorithms.
That is very true.
So my question is this. In this modern, highly sanitized system, could a poor kid practicing with a stuffed sock on a rocky dirt street ever slip through the cracks and become the undisputed king of the world again? Or was Pele a beautiful miracle of a very specific time and place that we will never, ever see replicated?
That is a phenomenal question. Does the struggle create the genius? And have we engineered the struggle out of the game? I don't know, but it is fascinating to consider. Thank you for guiding us through this incredible history.
It was a privilege to explore it. We hope you all enjoyed the deep dive, and we hope you feel more confident in your English listening skills after spending this hour with us.
Thank you so much for joining us. We invite you to continue improving your English by watching the next episode of the English podcast Football Legends series.